the best performer, in my opinion, in America's Grandmasters. Now Gaudan not far behind, honestly, with his spot to the World Championships booked. And then, of course, Nayara, again, she was saying that the pressure's getting to her the last couple of days, but I think that she is still flying the flag proudly for both caster and player and doing an admirable job so far this series, all culminating in what are two very, very strong teams. But like you said, the Europe squad, it's just on a whole nother level, it feels like. But starting things off now with Baby Bear versus Now Gaudan, it's going to be the Aggro Druid, a very predictable starting deck, nothing too surprising there. But starting with Quest Hunter for the Americas region, that is surprising.
Yeah, I just want to quickly highlight that I believe the bans did change where it's a double mage ban again. So the Druid is up for the Americas, I believe. That's what I glanced at on the graphic. But I kind of like this Quest Hunter start because it's so unexpected, right? I think the Americas might have just decided to say, you know what, like, let's not do what is already feeling like to be the standard openings of open with an aggro deck that we've seen many of the regions do. We've seen it from Pirate Warrior last series. We've seen a lot of Druid openings from multiple different regions as well. So they might just think, you know, let's try and throw a spanner in the works and just say, like, we know how important game number one is in an LHS format, so let's try and just throw the opponent off and maybe cue something they're not expecting. And we got it right. The Quest Hunter feels like it's more of a counter Q style deck, not often a deck that you would imagine going 3-0 and trying to get some sweep potential there. But I do like it as a bit of a chance here. And now Gaudan saying, you know what, I want to play more. I didn't have enough of those 3 games in a row in the previous series. I'm going to go again. And that might just be again, to either mix it up or just be like, you know what, I'm feeling pretty confident, even though I lost that last game, I did nearly just sweep. Put me back in and we'll see what can happen. But on the other side of that, of course, we do have Baby Bear kicking it off for Team EU on that aggro Druid. So we'll have to see how this one pans out, because again, it's a bit of a strange matchup. Good like spot removal from the Hunter against an aggro deck like this. But as ever, the issue with Hunter is a general lack of card draw, or the speed of card draw they have access to, which can mean that, yes, the tools are all there in the deck, but are they in the hand to be able to clean this up?
It's a big difference indeed, as it's going to be a difficult game for Now Gaudan to play. This one I think is simple, you just kill off the Battle Guard. But for Baby Bear, this was a deceptively complicated starting hand. This is the most obvious play, which is not to say bad at all. This is kind of step one, where you just play the strongest play on turn 2 that you can. But with Oracle, Battle Guard, and the Grey Bow, she of course had the option for the 6-mana power combo. However, you can kind of split it up. If she'd gone for Oracle on turn, like, for example, she could have gone just Bone Chewer Brawler on turn 2, then the Oracle, and then you play Battle Guard plus the Grey Bow. It's risky because it is dependent on the Oracle surviving the turn, which is far from a guarantee against this Quest Hunter that's just full of removal spells. But if it had happened, it would have been a little bit slower immediately. The payoff would have been monumental, though. Instead, she goes for a slightly less ambitious play, but one that can still get her a good amount of power on the board, even if the removal is there. Right, and that's the problem.
Ignore all that, Derek. You can answer my question, but I was muted to the stream. My apologies. I'm an idiot.
Unlucky. I shall answer your point about...
Chuck the question in there too.
Yes, okay. Well, I mean, I think the problem here mainly for Now Gaudan is that, like you're saying, he's got the removal, and even though Baby Bear can go wide with Adorable Infestation, she only really needs 1 minion to stick into Arbor Up. If you just have 1 minion that becomes a 3-4, a 4-4, whatever it may be, that can solo the game with a couple of 4-3s from the Treants as well. It's just too
Right.
powerful. And now Gul'dan, like you said, the removal's all there, but he can't draw it in time unless he gets Barrack Kodobane very, very soon. And even then, if you spend 5 mana on Barrack Kodobane, you're probably dead the next turn anyway. And this is kind of the problem that I think you're going to run into a lot of the time as the Quest Hunter, where you have removal for a few of their early gameplays, but not enough. You're not getting there in the long run.
Yeah, going to be a coin hero power. Nice with the buff from aim shot, taking down an additional minion. But like you said, like, look, one minion survived. Suddenly, can Nalgadan do that all over again? If this Arbor up comes down this turn, that's a big ask. And you can quickly see that Nalgadan's hand quality is running a little bit low in terms of just removal itself, right? The hand quality is pretty good with Scorpid, Rinlings, of course, like those cards are strong, but for actually like spot removing the board, it's just not really going to work out too well. So I actually really like this Arbor up from Baby Bear to just say, surely there isn't a way to remove more of this. I think Slate would be insane off the top here, of course, with Bowler Shot, but it's not. And now Nalgadan has to start making some tough decisions as to how he wants to go about actually cleaning this up. One of which could be a Rinlings to go and fish for Explosive Trap, which then converts like the Bowler Shot next turn into a much more powerful play.
Exactly, yeah. I think the Rinlings has a lot of merit here. Just digging with the Scorpion instead, there's a lot of good outcomes that you can get. These, not so much. I guess the aim shot with a 0 mana aimed hero power is pretty powerful, right? You can go for that next turn to be able to deal 4 damage to whatever it may be. And converting the hero power down to 0 mana this turn does give him a little bit more clear potential. It's going to be really close, and it does, of course, also rely on the quality of Baby Bear's draw, because she's very close to reaching the point where she just has too much damage on board. But if Nalgadan gets one strong clear, how good is her refill is what we need to ask.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And now with the 1-drop, this is a little bit more of a flexible turn, a few more options. Do you think Baby Bear should kill off this Scorpid now while it's there, to, for example, stop it being duplicated by Nalgadan? Or do you think this is getting to the point now where it's, say, maybe even the 2/2 and the Greybow, and just go face and say, you deal with this board, I'm not going to bother?
I feel like you still want to trade, because I know that giving the Death Rattle or killing Greybow activates its Death Rattle, but you're still losing a 4/6. That's not necessarily infinite value, because they can kill off the other minions first and then kill Greybow. So I really like this choice from Baby Bear, being responsible, killing off the minion, and saying you have to get there through board. There's just no burn damage aside from a tiny bit from Park Panther in this aggro druid, and you have to keep board control until the end of the game.
And that's a very important something you brought up, that when you say like, oh, well, there's Greybow there, but the other minions can be killed off first. Sometimes for some classes, that is very difficult to actually target the minions that don't have Taunt. But in Hunter, especially with a 0 mana targeted hero power and all of their spells being targetable, it is so much easier for Quest Hunter to pick apart a board like this and just play around Greybow, that I do think you're completely right. Just throwing this away could be very, very difficult indeed. We are going to see that, right? Just the picking off of every single other minion, and then just kind of letting Baby Bear have Greybow and say, you need to keep throwing these minions down, and if you just hit me every turn with a 4/6, and Nalgadan kills everything else and then naturally progresses his quest to Tavish, that might well not be enough for Baby Bear to win.
That, however, is a fantastic draw. Being able to go double Jerry here and get down 2/2/1s, buff them all with +1 attack, get a 2/2 as well off of the split Sow the Soil is just so premium, and allows that little bit of an extra push that maybe Nalgadan doesn't have the removal to fight against. You can see the grimace from Nalgadan on the other side. He knows that's the one thing he didn't want to see, is a final wide board push. It's not guaranteed to get there, of course, because he's still got the Rinlings rifle, but you are not wrong. This is one heck of a turn of Hearthstone.
Okay, let's think about this. Is Rinlings the best option? I don't do it often, because I think it might be safer to hero power down this. He can piercing shot the Greybow make a trade into obviously not the Death Rattle minion with Mankrik. I think that's his best option now. Piercing Shot, Greybow, trade into one of the others and just say that's not going to be enough. Because if he went for Rinlings and missed, he's just Omega dead, right? That's just the game done and dusted.
Tough choice here. He doesn't have any... Oh, he has one beast in play, sorry, in the Panthara. So this would be a 1 mana 3 damage, 1 mana 4 damage if he wanted it with the Thalnos. It's obviously a little bit less efficient than just going for the Piercing Shot, but it gets the Thalnos played, which draws him an extra card for next turn when he gets Tavish online, which is worth a little bit in its own right. But in the end, he does just go for the more clean clear, and then, like you said, I imagine he's going to trade into whatever doesn't get the Death Rattle.
Yeah, I think that option there for Nalgadan was definitely a choice of what to do next turn, and he took a cheap removal spell, which with Tavish obviously is fantastic. 1 mana, kill a thing, and activate that additional hero power. Just makes sense to me. Baby Bear on this turn does have that adorable infestation, but the problem is that's only, what, 7-8 damage with hero power? And the complete inability, realistically, to trade away this Mankrik, right? Because if she puts 7 damage into the larger Mankrik, then you've just got to say, well, leaving your opponent with a wide board just isn't as good as the aggro druid. So I do like this, getting the Greybow out once again. And I imagine this is just going to be used to push 4.
I think so. I was running through my head what the benefits are of holding on to the adorable infestation, because you have Arbor up, you have the composting is a very, very big one to try and get value out of it. But there's a good chance you have no minions on board at all heading into the next turn. Then you have nothing to buff anyway, unless you want to give the opposing Tavish +1/+1 on the adorable infestation. And so, as unlikely as this is to work, I do respect for Baby Bear just letting rip with the adorable infestation and just praying that by some miracle Nalgadan's hand is completely dead. But as we can see, that is just so not the case. All the muscles taken care of, every other minion on the board dead. Finally, the Greybow meets its ultimate demise. It won't be coming back anytime soon, and this surely has to be a wrap for Nalgi.
I think so. Even though I was slightly worried about the health difference earlier on, I think at this point it's just not good enough, because unlike Hunter, Druid is reliant on a board. There's no cards, like you said, apart from Park Panther, that can really push damage from hand. And the minions won't work either. There's a 7/7 and a 3/7 to make trades if absolutely needed for Nalgadan, as well as that rotating hero power. So yeah, I think this is just too much. Baby Bear, of course, is just going to play it out. Worst case, the game goes on longer by like a turn, so that's absolutely fine. Make Nalgadan play the turns out, but I think even this looks like close to lethal, right?
Pretty much there. It may as well be. I mean,
it's 18,
Baby Bear,
so yeah, not quite.
I just don't think Baby Bear has a win con. You can't draw cards without minions on board, because composting does absolutely nothing. There's no other card draw in the deck. Even Park Panther into Park Panther is not going to get the job done. Like if you get, I don't know, Teacher's Pet, which has Death Rattle, spawn a Panther, and then you go Park Panther. Like there are minuscule outs perhaps. So I think she's right to keep playing, but as I say, it's effectively lethal here. As we see again, aggro Druid failing to get over the finish line. This deck that has been very a high priority in terms of the pick phase and a reasonable priority in terms of the ban phase as well, is just falling flat on its face.
Yeah, and that's it's kind of very interesting. There's one win. You got it. It's pretty interesting as well, because Druid has it's got that weird predictability where on one hand we've seen it banned once or twice, and on the other hand, like, you know, if it's not banned, it's going to be played, and you know that it's very, very likely many of the teams would have brought aggro druid, so you can build around that, maybe build in a counter. But one thing I will say is I really do like this Quest Hunter opening, because I think it was very unpredictable, but also had good matchups to hit, right? It wasn't like, oh, here's a deck they'll never expect because it's bad, right? You know, like, it wasn't like you play a random deck and be like, you know, the bait's worth more than the actual deck. But because it does have some good matchups, I think this worked out really, really well for Americas, and it's a really good start to the series. As we've seen time and time again, going 1-0 up is a huge deal, because although you can get counterpicked, you effectively get the last counterpick at the best possible time in the series. So good start there for Nalgadan, continuing to show that he seems to be the powerhouse of the Americas constructed team at the moment.
He's getting the job done, isn't he? You can argue that maybe he's been given the better decks, but he's one with Quest Hunter. Like, this is not a tier 1 archetype right now. It's, I think one of the battle-ready decks that are available in the store right now. And as you can clearly see, it does some powerful stuff, to be fair. And if nothing else, it's an incredibly fun deck to play. It gives me, it reminisces me of the old Raza Priest days. It's a slightly different play style, much more aggressive, more so than generation or control oriented, but it's a lot of fun and actually has a lot of good matchups in the metagame right now. Specifically, I think against like Rogue, it has an actually pretty decent matchup against, where you're just dealing a whole bunch of damage, getting Tavish down early, and generally you just do your combo faster than the Rogue can. But in terms of counters available to the European players, what are we looking at here? They've got a deck like Pirate Warrior I could see them going for, which is just nice and aggressive out of the gate, and of course has a good amount of armor gain in order to be able to counteract that damage, would probably be where my head is at first of all. But I could also see the merit for potentially Quest Shaman. I think you'd rather save that as a counter to the to the aggro deck, sorry. It's got some merit at least, because it has some healing and, of course, a lot of aggressive potential in its own right.
Yeah, I could weirdly even see Face Hunter as well being queued.
That's true.
Potentially. The only weird thing is that if you queue Face Hunter, because both players have now banned Mage, right? So there's no Hunter to snipe the Mage as a plan, so you can use the Hunter a little bit freely. But I could see the Face Hunter being played, but this is one I did not expect, which was the Paladin coming out from Bunny Hopper here. This, again, is... As Paladin is often the case, I feel like we say this all the time, it doesn't feel like it's got any super bad matchups that are available after bans. I just want to say as a caveat before everyone jumps at me. Yes. But it also feels like it doesn't have any great matchups either. It's just a very rounded deck, and I just wonder if it's potentially a little bit too slow. But I will say the Libram of Hopes can really give the Hunter a lot of problems here if you can get to them fast enough. Like, they often need to be reduced, they often need to be played on curve, because without that, you almost likely will just get burned down by the Hunter, especially once obviously that Tavish kicks out.
So how do you feel about a hand like this for Nalgadan? Because obviously it's Quest Hunter, right? So you want to be chugging along with the quest and actually dealing damage with your spells. But just coin Scorpid into Mankrik or the other way around, I think is a pretty strong start in just proactively spending your mana.
I think so too. You've got Quest, of course, available, then coin 3 into 3, and if you're feeling scared at any point, he does just have the 1 mana deal 2, right? Or deal 2 plus beast, of course. So there are a lot of options for him here as well. He's got some emergency buttons if he needs to press them, but generally speaking, I do agree. Coin 3 into 3, especially because you're likely to fall behind you to having to play the quest. Looks like it's a very, very good start indeed. But Bunny Hopper's also not messing about, right? You got the Knight of Anointment already, McGurgle ready for turn 2. Got a bit of a weird turn next turn, but then he does have that carry-all to help him out. So both players here looking pretty strong with these openings.
Yeah, it's not terrible. I don't know. I don't know if I'm a Paladin pessimist, but I struggle to call any hand that doesn't have Aldor Truthseeker a good hand, because I think that even though this is reasonable, he's chugging along, he's spending his mana. Without that Truthseeker, every play you can make in the mid to late game feels so much weaker. Like Libram of Hope for 9 mana, not being able to go 0 mana +1/+1 on all your minions, it slows you down so much. It feels like you're moving through molasses as you try to play the game, rather than the gorgeous fluid gameplay that you can get with repeated Librams of Wisdom for 0 mana and nice cheap 8/8 taunt.
Yeah, you would often like it in the mulligan, that's why you see it kept so much, but there is still time, right? There's still a couple of turns to draw it, so there's still a chance here for Bunny Hopper. He also has the opportunity now that he did draw that Hand of Adal to be able to just put that on the McGurgle, take a nice trade, keep hold of the 1/1. Because in this matchup, that you don't really have an option to not play as many minions to stop the hunter being able to have easy targets for their spells, right? To deal damage and then to be able to progress that hero power. Because one big card they have is that bowler shot, which can only target minions. So if you don't have minions, they can't use it. But as Paladin, you can't really make that choice to not play things, right? Your whole deck is minion based. So, oh, there you go. Perfect timing and perfect board for bowler shot.
Yeah, I guess in the end you would probably rather just be more mana efficient. I was looking at if you'd rather go for the Overwhelm, and you can still consider it if you get a good 1 mana play, but I'm not really sure what that would be, to be honest. I think the bowler shot, as you said, is just a little bit too clean.
Yeah.
And then from there you can look at...
Well, I think...
Probably taking Slate, I want to say.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think now that Slate's offered, Nalgadan could keep bowler shot, because that's insane. An AoE, like, just insta-kill removal is very, very strong. Yeah. And he could still just overwhelm the McGurgle, and oh no, he leaves a 1-1 on the board, right? Not the end of the world.
That's true.
Because it's only 5 mana, right? He has to float next turn. He has Piercing Shot and Scorpid to cover the next turn. Then at any point, he just has Slate Bowler Shot and just obliterates the Paladin build.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that against Paladin, the bowler shot with Slate might not be that good, because there's often a lot of Divine Shields or like 1/1s in the middle that can get in the way. But if you have a 0 mana or even a 2 mana targeted hero power, you can often deal with the Divine Shields and then follow up, of course, with the bowler shot afterwards. I was kind of coming around to your play, I've got to be honest, but Nalgadan takes an entirely different tact, going with another damage spell. I think just trying to be able to keep up in the mid game. It's worth remembering that while in my head, Piercing Shot is pointed at the smallest health minion in order to deal damage face, it's just 4 mana deal 6 damage, which is relatively efficient in the mid game. It's going to kill off everything that Bunny Hopper can play for the next few turns.
Yeah, this card definitely changes its role a little bit in this Quest Hunter, because it's just a strong removal tool that progresses your quest, right? And you know if you get to that quest finish, you're able to play Tavish and then you just overpower your opponent. That's the goal, especially in these slower matchups. So I don't hate the Piercing Shot. I think I was a fan of just picking up Slate, even if it wasn't for the bowler shot, but just in general. I can definitely get behind just having more sort of straightforward removal.
Now it's time for everyone's least favorite thing to do in Hearthstone, using damage spells on Divine Shields. It feels awful, doesn't progress your quest, and just feels like you're wasting cards in your hand, to the point where, I don't know, do you almost want to go like aimed shot face just so that you can use the hero power on a minion next turn?
Yeah, it is tricky, isn't it? He did go for the Piercing Shot as well. This does activate his quest because it hits face through the Divine Shield, which is kind of cool. An interaction that maybe not everyone knows about with like the way Piercing Shot and Divine Shield work. Bunny Hopper does have the Hand of a Doll in the Parrot as well, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's why I love this card so much. Like, so many times, it's just a good 4-drop once stats are done, right? Like, once it's got whatever buff it may be. And even if it's just a Libram of Wisdom, which is what the smallest buff it can get, it's still strong, right?
Yeah. It's, what, a 4 mana 4/5 with a very strong effect of giving you another Libram of Wisdom on a route. Like, it's almost never bad. Like, it's only if it's on curve and you haven't played anything. And even then, if you absolutely have to play it, a 4 mana 3/4 is still something to do. I do agree that it is just the way to go with Paladin. Okay, so now there are the possibilities for Nalgadan to get his hero power down to 0 on this turn, right? We could see Piercing Shot on the 5/5, and then Overwhelm plus hero power could be used to take out the Cariel. Alternatively, you could bring your hero power up to 4 damage with the aimed shot and use that to take out the Cariel. But Nalgadan's just holding on to that in what is, I think, simply just a more mana efficient play with this line.
Yeah, I like this play a lot because if you look at his hand as well, even though this looks like, a lot of resources to pump into 2 minions, it is progressing his quest, and then once he gets Tavish down, he has Mana Feeder Panthera, he has Scorpid, so he's actually got a lot of card draw / generation, right? So once Tavish is down, and if he can just get there, he won't be playing Tavish with an empty hand more than likely. He will have resources available due to the nature of what his hand looks like right now. So I do like just maybe even looking like you're doing a bit overkill there on some of the minions, right? Bunny, though, keeping his game plan very simple. Biggest minions on curve, go.
Okay, so now Hero Power, the Divine Shield of the Devout Pupil. Aimed Shot Overwhelm does kill it off, gives you 4 mana Hero Power next turn as well, and you could just finish with the Marsul, the Panthara as well to draw an extra card.
And of course do it in this order.
Strictly better order.
Yep. Well, he could do that, yeah, if he really wants to.
Yeah, save the one that can go face. Love it.
It's funny, isn't it? I love that. It's just the typical hunter approach. Like, oh, well, hang on, Overwhelm could do more damage, right? If I have more beasts later on. Yeah, but Arcane Shot goes face. Oh, okay.
Easy
Conversation finished.
So now it's no longer Hand of Adel, it is the Noble Mount, which is a little bit less impressive, to be honest, on the Sunwing. And because it doesn't activate the Devout Pupil, right, because you didn't cast it on a friendly minion, you couldn't then go for Sunwing plus the Devout Pupil, unfortunately. So maybe it's just Pupil Hero Power Pass? I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe it is just still the parrot.
Maybe.
Or
Okay.
play the big minion.
I respect it.
I mean, without Libram of Hopes in hand, right? Like, it's not like Bunny Hopper can expect to hold Liadrian for 6 turns and then get max value, right? Not in this game, or not in this matchup, should I say. So, looks like he's just playing for the biggest, beefiest minions on board and is going to try and make a push because although now Gadan has seemed like he's had a good game, and I think he has so far, he's on 20 health, so he has been taking hits, been taking bits of damage here, and then going forward, Bunny Hopper can go for that Parrot Devout Pupil next turn to try and go a bit wider on board and put some pressure on.
And it's a little interesting in terms of the reads that Nalgadan has and what that allows him to do in terms of face versus board control, because I believe this Libram of Justice costs 3 because of 1 Libram reduction and 1 Carriel effect. And so Nalgadan knows that Libram of Hope is probably not on the left-hand side of Bunny Hopper's hand. Otherwise, it would have been played on this turn instead of the Liadrian. But it could very well be that there's a Libram of Hope on the right-hand side, which wasn't affected by Carriel and therefore costs 8. And so if he just goes all face on this turn, even though that's a reasonable approach most of the time, he could just be hit with a Libram of Hope, an 8/8 taunt, and there's still a Lady Liadrian on board. Then he would be in some pretty big trouble. And so because of that, I do think that this line of going for killing the Lady Liadrian is probably more responsible.
And yeah, with this hand from Nalgadan, like I said, he does have a lot of resources available still. So it's not like he's going to be running dry anytime soon, which is your only fear at this point in the game as Quest Hunter.
We all good, Bunny? Oh, it's not his go yet. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Ooh, that's a spicy top deck. Oh. Unfortunate. Frustrating to cast, and I can only imagine even more frustrating to try and play through. But as I was leading up to, a couple of ways that you can go about it on this turn. Obviously, with City Tax in combination with Barov or Libram of Justice is tempting, but I get the impression there might be a slightly more efficient way that you can spend your mana on this turn that involves a Devout Pupil, as well as clearing off the Tavish.
He's going to just end up doing the City Tax clear anyway. He did want to just draw a card, have a look what's going on, and then next turn he did get that Libram of Hope, so he can start to heal up, and this looks like where it's going to start maybe slipping away here for Nalgodan. There's the slate, but not going to get much done right now. There is, what, a minimum of 2 potential spells available to play this turn? Obviously Nalgodan won't be able to draw from the quick shot this turn because it would involve spending 8 mana just to empty the hand, but then the Scorpid would give him a card. Unless it's 0 mana card, I guess.
Yeah, like Serpent Bloom, I guess would be the only one, because if he gets the other one, what's it called, Devouring Swarm, then it would just refill his hand anyway. So yeah, there's a single outcome that would allow him to draw off of it, and it's not a very good one, giving his Poisonous Beast poisonous.
Now it's really poisonous.
Yeah, it's toxic.
Okay, I can get behind Freezing Trap.
Yeah, good point. I was going to say it's just Demon Companion, but yeah, Freezing Trap likely to be very good against Paladin, isn't it?
And even if there's a Broom, then fine. Just you compare it to...
True.
There is only one in the deck, actually, for EU as well. And if the Broom comes out, it's kind of unlucky. But with those choices, I do think that Freezing was just a lot better overall.
All right, we've got to be looking at now doubling up on these Librams of Hope, right, alongside the Sunwing Squawker. It would mean that you have to target a minion, right, rather than your face, because I believe Sunwing Squawker only capitalizes off of targeting minions rather than targeting face. But if you get 2 activations off it, maybe it's worth it. You do lose out on a lot of heal, though, which is kind of what you need here.
Yeah, it is a little bit scary, isn't it? I think straight away Bunny has to work out what this secret is, so maybe he has to just attack first with this Aldor. Because if he gets to go face, there's even a chance that he just does the Libram of Hope and says that's actually enough to win the game, right? Because if an 8-8 and a 4-5 live. But the problem with that is he knows that the Scorpid will kill the 8-8, because Hero Power, as you mentioned before, can just peel the shield, and then the Scorpid would trade into the big minion.
Yeah, I guess it... If you are going Libram of Hope, which is far from a guarantee on this turn, I guess it probably does have to go face. It's just too scary to be leaving yourself open to all this damage. As long as you heal up every turn, you're probably going to outvalue your opponent anyway.
I'm wondering here, is it ever like the Parrot Noble Mount Devout Pupil play? Just because suddenly, like, 2 Divine Shield minions is a bit of a bigger ask, right, for Nalgodan to clean up?
Yeah, that's very difficult, that's true. Even if you can get value off of those Scorpid once, you're still very far ahead on the board. Oh. I mean, do you just start launching all of this at face and say you don't have Libram of Hope? He's kind of losing this game in the long run anyway.
That is 14 damage, I think, if I added it up correctly.
That's a lot of damage.
It's a lot when you can put your opponent at 6 and you can almost certainly deal, what, 4 next turn? I guess that's the problem, right? Hero Power, spell Hero Power is only...
oh, my man.
it's 4, but then you'd need exactly the damage. Yeah, I think that's fine, actually. It is... I think you just rely on having the one spell you draw next turn, hopefully 1 being a spell, and 2 it being like basically any amount of damage.
Close to just lethal on this turn now, with him getting his opponent down to 3 that it will be on this turn is pretty spicy, but Bunny Hopper, as we can see, with a Libram of Hope. It's not game-ending necessarily, but it's pretty damn close to it, getting himself all the way up to 11. That's going to be a very, very tall order for Nalgadan to deal next turn. Pretty much forces exactly Barrett Kodobane off the top, might be able to do it, but even then, I think he's actually used both aim shots, right?
Yeah, he had one early on, and then he chose one right off tracking, I think.
Yeah. He could get, well, actually, if he gets Barrett Kodobane, he'd be guaranteed the wife, I think, as he played Mankrik at the start of this game, unless I'm thinking of last game instead. Which
it's all melded into one.
Exactly, it's 3 extra damage, then they're down to 8. Hero power quick shot plus another 1 cost minion means that I think Barrett Kodobane, if Nalgadan gets it here, is still just lethal.
I also think here is Bunny going to tax this turn.
Just one. Maybe you do.
Because realistically looking at this game, it lasts one more turn either side, right? So
yeah.
Take you 1 health. It's not like Nalgadan's going to make 5/8/8 taunt Divine Shields or something that he needs to clear with Barov, right? The deck just doesn't play those cards. So I do actually really like this city tax and just say, you know what? 1 might just help.
A couple of draws that could have helped. Obviously, Barrett Kodobane, as I said, maybe a tracking could have been enough, or some kind of crazy outcome off the Scorpid. But that is not it. Bunny gets the win with the counter Q, and the texture of this game is already looking very different, as instead of a 2-0, 2-0, and then a final game 5, it's looking to be a lot more back and forth, assuming that Americas can get us a good counter Q versus this Paladin.
Yeah, it's just looking like a strange one, isn't it? And once again, like, is Paladin like weirdly becoming the star of this specific tournament meta? Because, you know, 3 or 4 of the best decks in the game are being banned out pretty consistently, and that means that Paladin just has this sort of weird flow between being a kind of aggro deck sometimes, but then has tons of late game potential and can play very defensive. I think it really does just ride the line right between them both, with these sort of on-tempo aggressive minions into Libram of Hopes, Liadrin very in late game, the ability to actually just clear multiple boards with a combination of Barov, Libram of Justice, City Tax, and so on. I think it's a very interesting deck and a very flexible deck that sometimes makes that a bad thing, that it's so flexible that sometimes you just draw the game plan you don't want. But in this format, it's kind of hard to pick into. We've discussed already a lot over the past day and a half of like, well, what are you queuing into Paladin to actually feel like you've got a good hard counter going?
Yeah, exactly. It's indicative of this meta right now. I just think that so many decks right now have such an even matchup spread, which is what personally I love to see, especially for a healthy ladder meta game. Like, you know, you can feel like maybe you're facing decks that in that specific game you didn't have all too much interaction because you just got garroted down or maybe burned down with ignites against Quest Mage. But generally across the board, if you look at the aggregate of a lot of different games, you're having a very good shot in almost every matchup with almost every decent deck in this meta game right now, which is, like you say, one of the reasons why Paladin is difficult to counter, because it's firmly in that middle ground where it feels like it has a reasonable matchup against more or less everything. But for the Americas players, in terms of what they could go for here, I'm thinking Shaman would be reasonable enough. They've already, they still have their aggro druid, right? Because EU, Baby Bear lost with her aggro druid at the start. It's only the paladin. Oh, sorry, it's only the hunter that has been played so far for the Americas. So they could switch over to that aggro druid. I think would be very reasonable as well to just try and, as I said, get underneath all of that big tauntage by killing them on turn 5 with an arbor up. It's a tough call, but if I had to go for it personally, I think I'm probably moving over to the aggro druid, just so that you have the quest shaman as a counter pick if they then go for another aggro deck.
Oh wait, they can't play aggro druid, right? Because it's LHS. Don't they lose the deck they lose with? Or am I going
Americas,
crazy?
Right? Europe lost with the aggro druid.
Yeah, of course. Sorry. I'm thinking
America's
the other way around. Yes. I am going crazy. Who would have thought? Yeah, you're completely right, and I am with you in general. That was why I was confused myself. I was started going, "This is a great plan." I was like, "Wait a minute, didn't aggro druid already lose?" Yes, but on the wrong side.
On the other side.
So yeah, I can definitely see that. Although honestly, From what we saw earlier, I do quite like the idea of Shaman kind of being the weird counter to Paladin. I think you have those options, right, of just saying to do what potentially Bunny did, but I do think that Burkhan, at least option, must come up regularly in the matchup, right? It's not like Paladin often just beats you down by turn 4 or 5. Like, yes, they can be aggressive, but maybe not that aggressive. And then once Burkhan comes down, I do think you have that opportunity to do so many different things. We saw, what was it, 2 devolving missiles Bunny got in that game in the last series? Or was it a revolve and a devolving missile? Something like that. And so that's on one hand. You have great removal as an option for generation. You've got great minions, great burst damage. So I think I would lean towards the Shaman, but I have no qualms about going for the aggro druid as well, because like you said, you can just go straight under all that removal. We know that the removal from Paladin does come much later in the game than a lot of these other classes that are running some kind of either AoE or spot removal. From Paladin, it really is like turn 4 onwards generally, maybe turn 5 is like the fastest it can happen, and that's just too slow sometimes. So I am quite excited to see what they are going to queue in here. Again, just a reminder for anyone joining us, I am aware we are slowly ticking forward to a more reasonable time to be awake in the European region at least. And we are going to be in our second match currently of constructed portion of the day. We are going to be moving on to Mercenaries next, which is going to still be Americas versus EU. And then after a short break, we'll be going into the next phase, which will be China versus Asia Pacific. And then we're going to, of course, start with Battlegrounds again, then go into Constructed, and then finish with Mercenaries, hopefully today, as we did not finish with Mercenaries yesterday, unfortunately. But I'm excited to see how the rest of the day pans out, and I think even though, we are sort of plowing through today a little bit faster, it's really cool to just see these regions sort of fight each other, but also just in a more focused scenario, right? It's not like, for example, in a Masters Tour, we might see, a player from China face a player from EU. That's pretty cool to see come out, but it's one match. Whereas now we're seeing, okay, EU versus China in Battlegrounds, then straight onto Constructed, then straight onto Mercenaries, to just really give sort of in-depth look, and probably a lot of smack talk coming out from all these players and regions throughout many different formats. It's kind of cool. And it does look like now we do have the deck being chosen. It's going to be Monsanto this time, and he is going to queue up that Quest Shaman. So as I said, I completely get the Druid potential, but this Quest Shaman might just do the trick.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very reasonable play to go for the Quest Charm. And like I said, I thought it would probably be saved to go for a counter queue. But if you go a little bit further, if you queue Druid and win with it, your opponent probably isn't going to queue their own aggro deck. They're probably going to queue like a control deck instead, in which case Shaman doesn't become a very good counter queue to that anyway. So if you map it out for Monsanto, this does, I think, make a good amount of sense as we enter a very, very interesting matchup. One that is, both decks that can function quickly and slowly, depending on what hand they get. And one that, while they are not both quest decks, they're both racing towards a goal, an objective to complete in this game, which is for Shaman, completing the quest and getting Brucan down. And for Paladin Loki, it's just playing with Libram of Hope. If they can get their 8/8 Taunt Divine Shield down, often if that comes down on turn 7, it's just a little bit too fast for this Shaman, because then the turn after is very often when they want to play their own Brucan. That's not a possibility anymore because of the huge taunt in play.
Right.
So while the early skirmish for board is very important, make sure you're keeping an eye on who's getting closer towards their big reward, be it Brucan or one of the big Divine Shield taunts for Paladin.
Monsanto still taking his time over this mulligan. Bunny Hoppers looks mighty fine to me. But I imagine this multicast has been thrown, right? Okay, yeah, he is. For a second, I thought he was keeping it. I was like, well, that's very adventurous. I know it's a 4-drop, but you really need to sort of plan around it first. And, okay, Monsanto's post-mulligan looks pretty strong overall.
Bunny Hoppers as well, not looking terrible if he can get himself Hand of Adult, Libram of Wisdom. Okay, it's just something to play on turn 2 leading up into the Banana Man, and then of course he's got that mid game that I was talking about in the form of the Aldor Truth Seeker, but it's going to have to do a lot of work to come back against this very potent start for Monsanto. He's got that gorgeous blend of both minions, removal, and of course quest development that you really want to be getting as soon as possible, with all the pieces in hand to complete quest stage 1 already.
Yeah, it is being pieced together really well, isn't it? And that's the fear, isn't it? It's just problem number one for Bunny Hopper is if this Brukan appears a bit too easily for Monsanto, that's when things will really, really spiral out of control. Already Bunny Hopper just, I'm sure, thinking about the potential of Hero Power versus the Libram, thinking that just an additional minion, an additional attack option might be more powerful. And this could work out. I guess this opens up the option of if he gets a, how would that work? Yeah, if he got exactly Attendant next turn, he could like Libram a 1/1 trade, Libram a 1/1 trade, if he really needed to. But it's a bit of a long shot, but one you have to weigh up, against like the benefits of just having +1/+1 on one minion. I do think I actually like this hero power from Bunny Hopper.
Fair enough. Yeah, it goes a little bit wider as well. It means like if they want a Perpetual Flame, it's going to cost them an extra mana overloaded the turn after as well, which you're not too sad about if that's even a fringe part of play. It still could come up. Monsanto, on the other hand, though, with a really, really complicated couple of turns. Like, I would hear the merit for all in with the blooms and complete quest on this turn. I would hear the merit for Wand Maker. I would almost hear the merit for just like tempo diligent note takers to set up for a stronger play next turn. But in the end, he just ends up with Coin Feral Spirits, which allows him to get some stats on the board, set up for a stronger play in the future. And again, we're seeing this interaction with Fireheart off the top. It means that now you want to be a lot more conservative with this Lightning Bloom. At the very least, you kind of want to go for Diligent Note Taker plus Lightning Bloom, so you still have another one to go with your Fireheart afterwards, because you really, really want to get as much value of that as you can in one turn.
Right. Here, though, for Bunny Hopper, gonna slightly pay for actually not getting any of those buffs down, like not getting the Libram down earlier on. Does mean that this parrot currently does a whole lot of nothing, but it is buffed as a 4/5 anyway, so maybe that's just good enough. 4 mana, 4/5, let's go. Bunny Hopper decides no, going for Noble Mount and probably Hero Power again. Not looking too shabby now. It's sorry, go on.
No, sorry. Just going to say that it's gone from a reasonable hand that was high on tempo but somewhat low on value, to one that is just absolutely chock-a-block with value. Like, he can go for Note Taker double guidance on this turn, which would complete his first layer of quest. You're not using Bloom in your first layer of quest, which is generally something you want to do, but because he has that Fireheart in hand again, I think I would be very happy to save the Bloom to go with that instead.
Yeah, it looks like a good plan.
Ooh. They're not terrible.
This is one of the general weaknesses of Paladin. Although this is a generally solid hand here for Bunny Hopper, this turn is just play a dude, pass. Whereas Monsanto on this quest shaman, of course, has a ton of options going forward within the next turn, and even the future of Bunny Hopper's turns just look like play a dude and pass for now.
Oh, Raven, Hearthstone was built on play a dude and pass. This has served us well for 7 years at this point, and it's going to serve Bunny Hopper reasonably well here. Like you say, Monsanto has a far more difficult time of it in terms of the complexity of decisions and in the flexibility of his play. But Bunny Hopper's just doing big, dumb, powerful stuff every turn. He's going to play probably a Devout Pupil next turn. He can target one of his minions with the Libram of Hope and then go Libram of Hope into the Parrot for another one. He's got the Varian as well. Like, he's got really powerful plays, especially once turn 7 and 8 roll around. It's just whether Monsanto can get that quest completed quickly enough is, I think, the only thing that can keep him in the game against that just turn after turn of massive minions.
It's very close, isn't it? Both players have pretty much what they need to secure the game, but because of that natural fact that they both have it, it's going to be a tricky one indeed here. Let's have a look. Did he go for Phoenix? Didn't quite see what he picked. Yeah, okay.
He did pick Phoenix. Interesting.
I mean, he
Kinda
has a
looked like
lot
he was
of
reaching.
potential AoE, right?
Yes, yeah, I think that has a lot of merit.
Okay, he gets the hit with a double trade.
Yeah, I think here I am probably... Yeah, I think I'm just playing the Devout Pupil. I was wondering if you could get a play where you go for Parrot into Devout Pupil, but I don't think the mana quite works out. Even if you like trade your 3/1 first, which then gives you another Libram, and then play it again, it's not quite there.
Yeah.
And therefore, saving the Parrot for the Libram of Hope anyway is more powerful, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm guessing the general plan here for Bunny Hopper, especially because he isn't really threatened on health, is to get this Devout Pupil down, then next turn get the Libram on a minion, to then the turn after play the Parrot to generate an additional 8/8. So I think that's the plan overall. Of course, plans may change, but it's as good as I can see here. He's just working out where he wants to do this and what buffs he wants to go for, because he can do the trade now and then just play Devout Pupil and go, but now it looks like Bunny Hopper is going to go for the Parrot right now. Huh.
Interesting. A very high tempo play and not wanting to be, I guess, baited into being too greedy. I mean, if we look at his plays, he does still have Libram of Hope into Varian, into all the Varian things afterwards. So Parrot, if it was going to come down, it probably wouldn't be until turn 9 that you get that power play. And are you really not going to play any Librams of Wisdom in between when you play Libram of Hope and turn 9? It's a little tricky to pass out, and he does instead just go for an immediately higher tempo play. And you know what? I can respect it. It does get him ahead on board right at the start and leave him very resilient to most of Shaman's removal options.
Oh, double bloom. Where to go from here?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what quest stage he is on, but I'm pretty sure he can at least get the 3/3 on this turn. I'm just wondering if he could go for a big 8th drop on the same turn with this charged call as well, which is pretty tempting leading into a potential Libram of Hope turn for your opponent, getting that initiative with the big minion online first.
Oh, it's so tricky, isn't it? It's like there are too many options to pick from here for Monsanto, because he can choose like you kind of mentioned, right, of just trying to fight for the board now to an extent, or he can just be like Omega greedy, let this Phoenix pop, and then build into Brakan, and then say, instead of fighting for the board, I'm just going to take over the board once Brakan's been down, because he can already do a lot of work with this Phoenix and some of these removal tools.
And weirdly enough, despite Monsanto having 10 cards in hand now, his plays have been very, very standard, very straightforward for the last couple of turns. But now we see what it's all been leading up to. +2 spell damage, and then Instructor Fire Heart played. A premium first outcome in the Devolving Missiles as well. Just go. Just play it. You gotta go. There's so many actions to do this turn. Oh, that sucks, but at least you got rid of the 8/8 taunt and got a really small 7-drop.
Yeah, still plenty of mana to play around with here for Monsanto with those blooms.
Oh, and this overdraft as well is going to do so much damage. Can he get Brukan on this turn, or at least get it in hand on this turn?
I don't... Yeah, you can get it in hand, right? I don't think he can play it. Should be off. Unless, I mean, he could just discover blooms, right? So he could, like, you know, saying that for sure is always a risky business, but yeah, he's still cleaning up a lot of this board, this spell damage. You've seen Monsanto set up for this for a few turns now, right? Picking the Phoenix in the first place, dropping it down, and then holding on to the a lot of these spells to be able to just cash in on this extra spell damage, and suddenly he's flipped the board on its head. We do see Samuro available for Bunny Hopper along with some Librams, so it's not like this board flip is the biggest deal, and Bunny Hopper can respond, but he did lose a lot of minions, right? Obviously, if Monsanto couldn't clear that board, the game starts to steamroll.
And the problem is for Bunny Hopper is that he has a board now that, scary though it may be, because he gets to play the Devout Pupil as well, it's a board that I think you can happily play Brucan into. You're not dying the turn after this comes down. You're going to tank upwards of 10 damage, like 10, 11 damage. And while that's scary, you have the follow-up afterwards with double charged call. It's so worth it here for Monsanto to get that Brucan down and then follow up with a whole bunch of taunts, a whole bunch of rabbits, use the bunnies to take down Bunny himself. And from there, I think the Shaman starts to get in a position where Paladin just can't keep up with those double spells.
Yeah, there's the Brucan now. Also, there's a Revolve, which you've got to wonder how valuable that is. 2 Divine Shield minions, it removes the McGurgle Prime from the equation. It removes the Librams from the Samuro. You know, obviously higher damage there on the Nathan Lion. But not bad, right? That's a lot of value removed from Bunny Hopper's game plan.
Yeah. Oh, is he really considering clearing and not playing Brucan? I guess if you don't overload too much, like as long as you don't overload at all, you can still play Brucan plus Charge Call next turn. But you'd have to play the Perpetual Flame in order to clear anyway.
Yeah, I was thinking of whether he was ever considering the summon, right? Because he has 2 of them. Maybe summoning 2 next turn with Brucan would be enough, and doing 1 this turn. If he hits something big, it could make an impact. But I think it's so unlikely he dies this turn that it's just worthwhile to play Brucan, because things could go haywire next turn.
Yeah, they could. And I think the clear wasn't even that clean anyway, because his Chain Lightning is level 2, so it would deal 3 damage. To White Mane, whatever that character's name is, and it wouldn't have given him a guaranteed clear with Perpetual Flame either.
So Bunny Hopper doing pretty much the only thing he can do, right? Just keep on pushing, chucking tons of damage to face there for Monsanto, but it's all going to come down to this next turn, really, from Monsanto. It's so strong, or it's potentially very strong, that Bunny Hopper's hand now is just not really equipped to deal with it, or to really pile on pressure the second time, right? This is a very threatening board, of course, but the refill, they're decent minions, but they're not game-winning minions, I would say.
So what kind of a situation are we in terms of a clear? There is double Chain Lightning, obviously to lower the health on both the White Mane and the Devout Pupil, which would then leave a Perpetual Flame that can clear most of this board, but there's still just that 8/8 on the side that disrupts it from being a guaranteed clear. So in the end, it's just going to be load up on these big bad boy 10 drops, and getting a 7/7 taunt, Death Rattle summon another taunt is not bad at all.
Oh, okay.
Oh, can you go? Oh, you can only play 1 because the spell damage reduction is all used up on the first. So you can't play double Perpetual Flame with the Devout Pupil, unfortunately. But it allows him to take up both of these minions with the 5 damage it deals thanks to double spell damage. Then take out the 8/8 as well. A monstrous clear here for Monsanto. And it means that Bunny Hopper cannot even hope to hit lethal on this turn. And if he's not killing his opponent, what is he doing? Look at this hand. It's got 1 board clear in it, maybe, and from there it just starts to crumble.
It really does, and this is what I was saying, right? Bunny Hopper's hand on the surface level isn't terrible, but it's not good either, right? It's not good enough. It's not a game-winning hand. He needs the Liadrin. He needs something big to try and fight back, because that swing turn from Monsanto, in which, to be fair, Monsanto had sort of been setting up for a turn like that for most of this game, it has looked very, very powerful. And there's something I can't work out whether satisfying or strange about the rabbit trading into exactly a 1/1 and then killing off everything either side. Just something you don't see every day, but really, really strong turn there from Monsanto. And Bunny Hopper's going to have to start fighting back.
So how's he doing that? He's got the blessing, the Libram of Justice in combination with the Broom. He gets a clear, it's decent on this turn, but for Monsanto, despite being down at 10 health, look at these plays. My goodness. 2 more 10 drops should he want them. A board full of 2/2 statted 5 drops if he wants that. Kill the entire board if he wants to with the rushing totems as well. The possibilities are just endless.
Yeah, just the fact he's got Note Taker and then the summon, right, is absolutely huge. Like, again. Look at Bunny's face then. He's upset that bunnies are going to kill him, look, see?
Yeah.
Oh, and it's just look at what Bunny had to do to clear basically this board last turn, and it's just back. And if not worse, it's just not going to happen, is it?
Oh, Deathwing as well. And Yogg! Is that really the best option he had? Okay, I guess he got Null and Bunny as the other two. But either way, Bunny Hopper throws it down. Monsanto again getting the counter queue back and forth, back and forth. This second series is so fine in its margins. And now it's obviously on EU to counter this Quest Shaman. And this, for me, Raven, has been one of the biggest things I've realized about this format, is that anti-aggro is kind of difficult to target in this metagame with Demon Hunter, Rogue, and Warlock all out of the metagame, which are the 3 best counters to Shaman. It becomes pretty difficult to fight back against its endless value and its endless removal.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing, isn't it? Like, obviously, it's just an outcome of what the meta is right now, but how do you beat generally slow decks, which slow decks are generally anti-aggro style decks a lot of the time? Well, with the combo decks, right? With the just pull your combo together, win the game. You remove that, and I think the missing link is that maybe a lot of the players didn't really think about this and thought, well, how do we beat decks like Shaman, decks like maybe even Paladin? You could make a suggestion at as well. Is that because then it's just aggro decks or Shaman and Paladin. That's pretty much what the meta is. There is the Priest from EU, of course, which is a little bit different. But in general, it looks like there's been no real attempt to think about this ban outcome, which I'm not saying there isn't. It's just my surface level analysis there. But it's just after the banning out the combo decks, it's like, oh yeah, well, what do you pick into Shaman? Well, we've got aggro Druid, we've got aggro Priest, we've got Hunter, it suddenly starts to stack up where it's like, I guess Paladin and Hope, and we've seen multiple times now that Paladin is not a sure win in any way, shape, or form. Like, Shaman's got it done a few times now, and you can just work out why Shaman can get a win over Paladin anyway, so a lot of that makes sense. So I do agree. I think this is kind of a weird floating spot where Shaman might be very, very strong indeed.
I agree completely, and I think you hit the nail on the head yesterday when you were saying maybe the bring was not to go aggro Druid and to go a ramp Druid, be it the version with Anacondra and Glowflies, be it the version with Anacondra and Celestial Alignment, where you're going for, I don't know, it might be Cthulhu, it might be Mr. Smite in the more recent builds, obviously, where you buff it up and then deal 30 plus damage in a turn with charging pirates, thanks to Jerry as well. Because that does give you, I think, a lot of extra utility against Shaman. They really struggle to deal with any combo-oriented game plan, as I would even count the spell version with Owls and Glowfly as pretty much a combo deck. It just makes one board that is so ultimately powerful that nothing can answer it. You lose a lot of percentage points in other matchups. Like, I would say if the field is full of aggro, obviously bringing a ramp Druid is very susceptible to that. But just have to have it as a pocket pick against those anti-aggro decks like Control Priest, Control Warrior, Quest Shaman is worth quite a lot.
And that's the thing, right? And that's the biggest deal and the biggest difference about this tournament and the way the meta works is there are 10 decks for each team, 4 bans, and you can pick any out of the 6 of the decks left over. Excuse me. So you wouldn't get punished for bringing something very niche like that. You could just not play it and play your other aggro decks. If you want an aggro deck, you're done. And if you don't want an aggro deck, you need something to counter the counter, you have it sat there. And the thing as well is, and we've seen this at least in the in GM specifically, but these types of druids, although they do have their weaknesses against specifically aggro, it doesn't mean it's an auto loss either, right? Especially, say, the Glowfly version. We've seen that deck, sweep as well, pull out tons of wins across matchups that it shouldn't necessarily win that often. So it's still very possible. So I do think that is that one question mark I have about the lineup building, because I think the key is I don't really assume that anyone thought Rogue, Warlock, or Demon Hunter were ever getting through bans, because you simply don't have good counter decks, right? And you don't want to give away free wins, especially game 1 wins, which is what you would expect to see almost, right? Like, 2 teams would queue Rogue game 1, and whoever wins looks like they're going to win the series pretty easily at that point. You know that those bans are extremely likely to happen. So we are going to see now the counter pick being just okay. We don't have a strict counter pick, so we're just going to play the mirror instead. And I think this is an outcome we should expect to see more and more as time goes on between the Shaman decks specifically.
And if you were going to be facing a mirror, I mean, obviously I was saying Bunny Hopper is the king of this Quest Shaman deck, but just having a Gabby on your side is never going to hurt your chances, I think. As, you know, I'm sure he's played a fair bit of this deck, and I'm sure just his natural intuition will also be able to guide him through too.
It's like, you know, when just tons of stuff is like, oh, make a team out of these, you have 10 points or something.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it's like, if Gabby was alone with 10 points, I would still just pick him. It's like, you have all these other players, that's fine. I'll pick Gabby, and I'll feel very confident. As and that's not even over bias, I would say. That's just factual. Look at his results this year. They're ridiculous.
Exactly. They can say, we have an army. We have a Gabby. That's the response you have, and it just can't be beaten.
Already now going to be a quick response indeed to these Feral Spirits here. And again, I like using this early in this matchup specifically, because you're not expecting Perpetual Flame to get the same kind of value you are in an aggro matchup. So just get the overload done with early, get the quest progression done, and deal with the Feral Spirits nice and easily there. So Gabby looks like he's keeping just ahead of Monsanto, but still very even matchup so far.
Yeah, both players with actually really good hands. I want to give the slight advantage to Monsanto, I'm going to say, because he's got himself that Note Taker plus Guidance combo, which is just so backbreaking in pretty much any matchup that isn't like a hyper aggro on your opponent. It gives you so much value, so much overload to go towards your quest as well, and the rest of his hand is nothing to sniff at either. We could very happily see Portal plus Primordial Studies on this turn if you just want to clear off the 2/2 rather than just going for Note Taker as the lone minion played on this turn. But as I said, double Guidance alongside the Note Taker would not be bad at all either.
Yeah, it looks like it's at least going for the first. This will of course depend on what he gets offered here.
Ooh, not bad at all.
Yeah, historically, obviously the deck's changed a little bit, but historically we have seen the natural resource wars between two Quest Shamans, right? Normally the player with the more cards in hand is the player doing the best. So the double generation there for Monsanto, very powerful indeed, although maybe not the most powerful outcomes of what he actually managed to discover.
I think weirdly enough here for Gabby, he actually hasn't played Nature as a spell school so far, because he's just played Perpetual Flame as the lone minion, which is, you know, fire spoken for, which is still good. And then with this Lightning Bolt, it means that his multicaster will be able to draw 2 next turn, and you're very happy with that. As long as it's up to 2, that's a fantastic play. And in combination with the Lightning Bolt, he can unlock his crystals if he wants to, or in combination with the Perpetual Flame, if that opens itself up as a possibility, and then end with the multicaster. It looks very strong.
Would like to see Monsanto start chucking out these Serpent Shrines, you know, just to try and wrestle some board control, because I don't think board control is necessarily how either player is going to win at this point in the game, but it makes your opponent spend time responding to you as opposed to spending time trying to generate resources, build up overload and such. And sometimes those things cross over, but I just think this is just good enough, right? Like, it's a solid turn for Monsanto, especially with the cargo coming out now. It's going to be a little bit of a difficult minion to deal with. And we've seen yet again that Phoenix sit there, ready and waiting for a big pop-off turn.
Okay, so you can go multicaster, see what you get. Bolt will unlock your remaining mana crystal, so you could go... Oh, okay. I was going to say you could go Bolt, Trade, and then maybe Revolve to end the turn to give yourself a better 4-drop. But now, of course, he has the possibility for Zapper, which unlocks his one remaining crystal, and then Lightning Bolt to take out the guard, is very powerful immediately. But I wonder if this Novice Zapper is more valuable to be saved with all of these spells. He's got a lot of cards that benefit off spell damage in hand. It's close.
Yeah. Really is tricky, isn't it? Because it's just the difference between accelerating the ball control plus the quest versus just trying to do the removal. And it looks like Gabby's just going to go face and go for Revolve. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. 3-5 is pretty solid. Good. I'll take that, Wind Fury.
Okay, a couple of good plays, obviously, for Monsanto. I'm looking at first port of call, just straight up portal plus flame. Allows him to clear the board, I think complete the second level of his quest as well, and even though he'll be relatively overloaded the turn after, that's fine. You're way ahead, and you have a Dormant coming alive that you can use with the, Lava Burst, Lava Shock, whatever that one's called, in order to summon a bunch of 1/1s as well.
I don't think it's either of those, is it? It's not Lava
I have
Shock.
no idea. Lava Crash, Lava something?
Magma Blast. I don't know.
Yeah. Hot Rocks.
Wait, isn't that Battlegrounds card? Yeah, so Monsanto just can't really answer this 3-5, which means that that's some good damage pushing through there, or just a couple of minion trades if Gabby chooses to do so. Of course, this 3-3 taunt does come up blocking it, but there's a little card called Perpetual Flame that Gabby has access to, which might put a stop to the majority of these minions on board.
Yeah, I hear it's pretty good. This is also the final layer of his first quest, I think, right? He hasn't even done the first level, which is perfect, because it then will recover him the 3 overloaded mana crystals, if I'm not mistaken.
And in this mirror, do you think it's you need to keep the minion summons for the late game here? Is that something you're forced into, or do you think there's ever a plan to go a bit more tempo, depending on the amount of overload you've done, of course?
Yeah, it's very much contextual. Like this game where it's so back and forth, I think is probably both players are going to try and save their charged call until post Brucan, because it feels like, I don't know, maybe if you're slightly ahead on board and you can summon an 8-drop is where the breakpoints start really making a difference, then you'd go for it. But if you're summoning a 5 or a 6-drop when you're even on board anyway, that's not winning you the game. It's not worth it. Whereas, 2 Scrapyard Colossus or a Dark Moon Rabbit out of nowhere, that could potentially just win you the game on its own. And so I do expect to see both players being very greedy, very avaricious with charged calls. But Gabby, interestingly enough, not going for the Perpetual Flame here, which is incredibly interesting to see. And to be fair, it does mean that he has, with both the Novice Zappers, an incredibly potent answer to whatever board Monsanto develops now.
And this is the turn he's looking for, right? We saw this in the previous game. The Phoenix got popped, and then suddenly everything blew up. So Monsanto might be able to make this work, put on a lot of pressure. He doesn't even have a particularly difficult board to deal with. He needs to deal the grand total of 1 damage to this drop.
Looks like because he's got the Night Taker, he is going with the tempo charge call. It's only 7 mana, which has a couple of good options, like the Stormwind Champion. That is definitely one of the best ones you can get.
Gabby, unhappy.
It's pretty bad, to be fair.
Yeah, because now his Perpetual Flame, even with 2 Zappers, doesn't even make the cut reliable, right? Like, it's good, but might not be perfect.
So he can go Zapper, Zapper, Note Taker, Bolt, Perpetual Flame. Have I invented mana there? I think that's exactly
1,
8,
2,
right?
3, 4. Yes, I believe so. You didn't say overdraft, did you?
No, I would overdraft next turn in that.
Yeah, then I
equation.
believe you are correct. That is 8 mana as far as I can see, and it looks like Gabby's forced into this. But the problem is, as I mentioned earlier, the Note Taker having to be used for a Lightning Bolt in that plan means that how does he win at that point? That's like his whole hand, more or less, to actually just clear this board.
Huh. So with this line, he gets a random 6-drop in exchange for being overloaded for 5 and saving the charged call in hand. I don't know. I feel ridiculous doubting Gabby, obviously, but I feel like I just preferred my line. Like, you clear the board, you're not overloaded next turn. You can summon like an 8-drop, I think, off of the charged call next turn instead of a 6-drop this turn. Like, it's technically more immediate tempo, I suppose.
Yeah. It's tricky, isn't it?
And he would have had the overdraft as well, so he could have dealt like 7 damage or something with the overdraft the turn after.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm stumbling here. Is the overdraft was played, but Gabby is 5 mana overloaded. You know what I mean? Like, that's the difficult part here. Yeah.
Okay. I've just been told by Bunny Hopper that my lines make no sense because I'm overloaded for 9. So ignore me. We're all good.
Oh, okay. That's
cool. Yeah, I forgot about the novice zapper overloading as well. I am just an idiot.
Are you telling me you're not okay with passing the turn?
It's not optimal, I'll say that. It's not optimal. And I will give Gabby the on this rare occasion he has passed it here, so fair enough.
It's only rare because it's only one time you thought you bested him. That's the only thing rare about
my lesson. Well learned.
Once, never again. You thought you'd be adventurous and question Gabby. But in that small meantime where we tried to work out whether Derek was an idiot or not, Monsanto has made a very, very strong play, got his Yashiraj on board, and although there's some sort of stopgaps in the way, there's still enough removal here for Monsanto to get through, especially if this Zapper can live, right? So he can clear this board no problem with his, what, Magma Guns? Where are we at now with what this card is called? Because I honestly can't remember.
Magma Guns. Yeah, I don't think that one would get through legal.
I mean, it more is like, you know, muscles. That's fun.
Oh, right.
Right, okay. That's how I'd pitch it anyway. Okay.
Oh,
same again here for Gabby.
Yeah, I mean, you're just going for it, you're playing Brucan.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, although it might look weird that Gabby's holding this Note Taker with no cards in hand, he has to wait for something big, right? Like, that plus Feral Spirit would do little to nothing in him actually winning the game. It would delay some of the attacks, I guess, but he really needs something big from this Note Taker, and now he effectively gets to double a double if he can play something or draw something next to it.
Yeah, he's going to need to find that charge call off the top, basically, or guidance. I don't know, basically just a lot of value or a lot of tempo if he's going to have any chance of turning this one around, as Monsanto is going overdrive now, hair into, you'd imagine, the Colossus, maybe even Deathwing, though, just to have the most amount of attack to guarantee the kill on your opponent next turn.
Right.
There's very little that Gabby can do about this.
Did go for the Colossus there. I guess it's a little bit more of a safeguard between any kind of, you know, just crazy AoE turn. What would Gabby have to get? It would be a long shot, but I guess the Death Rattle outweighs 5 extra attack when your opponent's on 18. It's not like if just Deathwing. Oh no, that's going to be game just like that. Gabby visibly upset with that one, but really good play there from Monsanto. I think Monsanto on this Shaman deck the past 2 games. He has looked very strong. He's looked like a man with a plan. And these big setup turns have paid off greatly. And he leads the way for the Americas to grab a point against the EU and take match number 2. So that's a 1-1 score there between EU and Americas in Constructed. And again, I just want to say, I think really solid play from Monsanto in this series.
Agreed. I think Monsanto had a couple of very weird games. They're not the kind of games that you usually see as Shaman, but ones that he navigated very well. If we think about his game versus Bunny Hopper, where he had a whole bunch of cards in hand, right? There was a point where he had 10 cards in hand, and he was just going like multicaster pass on the turn before. Like, he was making very, very slow plays, but then it all came together when we saw his big plan of just going for the biggest fire heart possible, which swung the board back in his favor, got him very rapid quest progression, and then he was able to go for the Brucan, all those big minions that Bunny Hopper simply couldn't answer. And then in that game, we saw he had Brucan in hand, and then he went for Charged Call before he'd even played it, which seems like a very counterintuitive way to go about the matchup. But I think he clearly knew when to try and seize tempo, which was that exact instance, and it meant that there was one less turn for Gabby to find those outs, and therefore Gabby himself had to make these very awkward plays like Charged Call for 6 mana, you know, that turn that I was happily butchering, where he had to instead go for a pretty mediocre play, but probably the best one he had available.
And you saw the way the mirror generally goes right there, right? I mentioned it earlier about it's just the allocation of resources. Monsanto's hand felt like it was full for almost all the game, whereas Gabby, because he was put in awkward spots, he had to use more cards for removal, and then like you saw at the end there, he was just holding on to Note Taker and hoping against hope that he was just going to draw something to be able to play. But of course, the Bloom did not work out. So it does mean, as I mentioned earlier, that EU and Americas both get 1 point each. So we're currently looking at 3-1 here, the score for this segment at least, or this matchup, but these points will just be all added together in the long run anyway. So good run for Americas, and I think I saw a message earlier in the Discord from, I think, Monsanto, saying he was happy to help the Battlegrounds team actually gain us a point for once. So, I think everyone's having a lot of fun across the whole team, not just in their specific format groups. So cool to see that matchup. And unfortunately for us, Derek, we're getting whooped by Americas. This is not how I foresaw today going. Fingers crossed for Mercenaries, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't looking like the cleanest necessarily for Tyson Casper yesterday. Obviously, unfortunately, we didn't get to see the end of the series that had to be played off stream due to connectivity issues, but they were able to go 1-1 against Asia Pacific. And, if it's another 1-1 here, yes, that does end up in favor of the Americas region, but it's not that bad. You're still in a decent spot as the European region. And at the very least, I'm excited for what we're going to get to see, because it was a resubmission when compared to yesterday, obviously, with the fixing of Cairn and Blinkfox. And so I'm excited to see how the Mercenaries meta will have developed, even in the 1 day of its inception at high-level competitive play.
Yeah, and I'm excited to just dive into Mercenaries. Obviously didn't get the chance yesterday, but it does mean I am interested to see if any of the players have done maybe some extra homework in how some of the matchups should or can play out. So looking forward to our first Mercenaries segment of the day. We are going to go to a quick break, of course, while we set this up and just make sure everything's hopefully as stable as it can possibly be for the Mercenaries section. So fingers crossed, we're all hoping it goes smoothly. But thanks a lot for watching. As usual, we'll be back soon with some more Hearthstone Global Invitational.